If you're a recruit or the parent of a recruit, you know that reaching out to college coaches is one of the most important steps in the process. But figuring out what to say to break the ice, that trips a lot of people up. And that's why I've partnered with Athlete Narrative. Athlete Narrative designed the Recruiter app to help athletes send clear, concise, and personalized emails to college coaches. Here's how it works. You start by filling out your radar page. Think of this as your digital resume. It's going to have your personal info, accolades, interests, and links to your game film. Then you use the Recruiter app to search for schools that match your interests. Once you find some schools, simply tap on a coach's name and the app will pull from your radar page to generate the perfect introductory email. All you have to do is personalize it with some quick info about why that specific school caught your attention. Then you hit send. The message goes straight from your inbox to theirs, and it's that simple. You do not need to pay thousands of dollars for an email service that might not even get results. For the same price as a month of Netflix, you can start sending emails that actually help you stand out. The recruiting process always rewards athletes who take initiative. Athlete Narrative helps you take that initiative faster. Download the app today using the link in this podcast description. Well, if it isn't the old information superhighway. Fancy seeing you here. Welcome to another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I went down a rabbit hole, and I want to talk to you about that rabbit hole. Last week, our guest was Dan Nagel, one of my oldest friends in the coaching profession and someone who, over the course of our friendship, has challenged me to think differently about a lot of things pertaining to basketball. But he said one very specific thing in our interview last week that really stuck with me and is going to set the table for everything you're going to be hearing this week. We were talking about the importance of game speed reps in practice and how he specifically, of any coach I know in my circle, reps detailed situations in practice. For example, making the extra pass in a drill, kicking the ball up the court off an inbound in a drill. Very, very specific situations. He reps them with more frequency than I've seen any other coaching staff in my career. And when I asked him if he had some sort of explanation for why doing that was important to him, he said to me, "We're not teaching you to study for a history exam here. We're trying to grow your instincts. We want you to be able to feel these things, because by the time you're done thinking about them, if you stand still and process, the game has passed you by." One day, I imagine that will be like the title of Dan Nagel's basketball book, Growing Your Instinct versus Studying the Game. But this is actually a very powerful thing, because growth in the game of basketball happens in different phases than the average young player or their parents would realize. Phase one, as we've talked about ad nauseum for the last few weeks, is obviously awareness. You're learning how the defense is playing you. You're learning what the situation is. You're understanding what you should be looking for in that situation and what you should do differently. Part two is you do drills and you build up your instinct to be able to read that situation and react to it in real time. So if we're looking at this on sort of like a development chart, you can't get to part two without the awareness part, right? You can't do the correct drills unless you know what drills you should be doing and you're mindful about what it is that you need to be working on and what puts you at a more competitive advantage, right? So the awareness comes first, and then there's the drill work. But then there's this other step that really nails a lot of people, and that's actually implementing it in a high-pressure environment. Because the one thing that we don't account for in practice that will never actually be able to manufacture are refs, an audience, and a scoreboard. Now, we can make practice difficult. We can make drill work difficult, but there is absolutely nothing in this universe that actually prepares you for the adrenaline boost that you are going to experience in a game. And that's where part three comes in. You have to be able to take these things that you just worked on in a controlled environment to build your instinct and be calm enough and present enough to recognize the situations when you should execute them in the game. And that takes exponentially more mental work than the average athlete and their family realizes. It is the reason that young people, for the most part, don't get minutes early on in their college careers. And then flash forward, why rookies at the professional level most of the time struggle to get burned early on in their professional careers. It is the adjustment of adrenaline, the game moving faster, and being able to stay in a flow state where you can analyze those things and make the correct decision. So I'm just playing this comment from Coach Nagel over and over again in my head, and I'm thinking about the importance of developing your instinct. This unbelievably serendipitous thing happens. I start working with the guys at Athlete Narrative, and as sort of a halftime show for this season, you may remember that David Hitz comes on the podcast and gives us a video walkthrough of how to use the Athlete Narrative platform. And he makes a joke about doing breath work. The moment that we wrap the podcast, he says to me, by the way, revisiting that breathwork joke, you know that's what I actually do, right? Like, that's my work. I specialize in neuroplasticity for athletes. Mind blown. So immediately, with this Dan Nagel comment in mind, my thought is we got to get David Hitz on for a podcast about mindfulness, breathing, and neuroplasticity, because we have to teach young people how to get themselves in a flow state so that they can execute what it is that they're working on. So, disclaimer, this version of the podcast is going to be a little different. You could listen to the first few minutes of this and be like, this has nothing to do with basketball or getting recruited. And I'm going to challenge you. This has everything to do with basketball and getting recruited, because how are you supposed to make the next right choice if there are mental barriers keeping you from being able to see what that right choice is? My guest, David Hitz, founder of the Neuro Pro, is going to guide you through not just the theory of mindful breathing and the power of breath work to expand your mind in these sorts of situations, but he's also going to give you some practical examples of how you can settle yourself in those crunch time moments. He's going to do a way better job than mid to late 20s Coach Jared. For recruits and parents, this is one of those conversations that's going to open your eyes to the part of development that you aren't really familiar with as you navigate either a recruiting process or your high school basketball career. In David's own words, it's not about becoming a better player. It's about becoming a stronger and more grounded person. And my final little warning to you, if you're thinking about dismissing some of what David has to say, the moment I was fully exposed to Division I basketball post-pandemic, the moment I set foot on Canisius's campus, that's when I realized that the emphasis on mental health and mindfulness in sport was everywhere. We had a phenomenal mental performance coach, someone who I've been begging to come on the podcast, and I'm going to get him eventually, Nate Huckle, who is still working with Canisius to this day. I met additional people in Nate's work that are working with college programs all over the country. These players have outlets that are working with them on breath work, that are working with them on being able to access in the moment that flow state that allows them to do the next right thing. And if they don't have access, then all that drill work and all that awareness is meaningless. The table has been set. This is one of my favorite conversations in a while. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. Let's dive in with David Hitz. And by the way, you're going to hear a joke about diving in too. But let's dive in. We just talked off air. I needed some breathwork exercises this morning because my son is in rampage mode on his way to daycare. So
Yes. Yeah. No, 100%. You will, you'll need it. And you'll find that as you do it and show him, he'll want to do it.
yeah.
I'm in that phase with my 4-year-old right now.
That is so. I'll actually tell you. You'll get a kick out of this. There's a little foreshadowing for our listeners. During his naps, whenever he like naps on me or I'm settling him down, I inhale for 4 and my exhale for 6 is a hum. And he has already, now he doesn't do it on purpose. He thinks he's making fun of me, but he already goes, when we get ready to nap. So
Nice.
we're on the right track. But this is a really cool category that I'm thrilled we're talking about. And I want to give you a little bit of background, David, because as we'll talk about over the course of the episode, before I knew what I was doing or understood this space at all, tried to integrate meditation and breath work into, pregame warm-ups, locker room routine, asking players to take breaths during timeouts. Then during the pandemic shutdown, I did a full-fledged mindfulness and breathing course. And like the very first reaction I had was like, oh, I was not helping. when I was trying to do this is how to actually do it. So I'm so grateful to talk about this with somebody that knows how to actually do it. Ready to dive in?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay. So let's start for our listeners. We're going to do this in the spirit of explain it to me like I'm 5.
Before we do that, should we do an intro of who I am?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Come on, bro.
Well, I should also tell you, I didn't tell you this. I usually do the intro after we finish. So you should know I'm keeping this. This is hilarious.
I love it.
You should know that they will have some sort of a sense of who you are. But yeah, tell me about yourself. Let's go.
Okay, let's do it. So you're going to tell him my name and all that. So I'm going to leave that out because I'm not going to take your job. But the shortest version of who I am outside of my day-to-day job with Athlete Narrative is what I call a mental performance coach, and primarily I work with athletes. And my journey with neuroscience began years and years ago, actually doing meditation. I tried doing all that and I was like, yeah, this doesn't work. Whatever, forget about it. And during grad school, which is actually in conflict resolution, I learned all these skills on mindfulness and things like that we can use for mediation, right? Bringing just hostile parties together and working through these issues. So I moved to Boise. I volunteer at the Small Claims Courthouse, and I've got a mentor. Quickly she becomes a mentor who is like, man, you've got a little bit different take. I think you should really look into this neuroscience stuff. It's really beneficial for me and blah, blah, blah. I said, sure, yeah, I'll get to it. Right. And every so often she would kind of nudge me. And fast forward 10 years almost from that point, my older brother died by suicide and caused all of us to take a huge pause and look at what are we doing? Are we taking care of ourselves? And for me, it sent me down this path of figuring out what are different ways that I can take care of myself. And as I was doing that, I met up with this mentor. We had breakfast and she goes, okay, are you kidding me? Now you really need to look at this stuff. And so she and I actually did a course through MIT in neuroscience. And it kind of opened up my understanding of the brain, of what's possible. And it coincided with my own journey of how to take care of myself. And so organically, for me, established kind of what are the pillars of that self-care for me. And people started just asking, hey, what's different? What are you doing that's different? You seem different, better, whatever. And as I would share with them, it just organically happened where, hey, can you teach me about that? Can you help me? And so over time, it just evolved into, I really love working with athletes, and the ability that we have as humans to tap into the things that we've already been given, we've got inside of us, right? But to use that to dial in your performance, to give you that edge from the mental performance side of things with your sport, allows you to be that much better. But what I love about it most is that it is so applicable to everything after sports and outside of sports and in life, that you learn these tools that you can use when you're playing and don't realize, holy crap, I'm using them outside of that as well and everything else that I'm doing. So the short and skinny is all of that comes to, I do mental performance coaching with athletes primarily based in neuroscience.
I want to ask you something, and I hope I'm not being too invasive here.
I'm an open book.
Okay. I appreciate you saying that. My immediate response to you sharing what you just shared is I can't imagine what it would be like to lose one of my siblings like that. Could you, if it's possible, provide some sort of insight into what breath work and what this sort of mindful exercises helped you through in that moment? Was it processing? Was it you kind of wrapping your head around it? Because, I mean, it's hard unless you've experienced trauma to visualize what you're actually sorting through. But if you could share like how it helped you navigate this, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. One of the things that I love most about breath work is that it forces you to get outside of yourself. Right. So often people try meditation and mindfulness, and it's kind of like, yeah, I tried it, it didn't work. Not realizing that there's so many different ways that one can meditate and practice mindfulness, that it's not like a one size fits all. It's figuring out what works for you. So for me, as I was going through all of that, I was recommended some guided breathworks from a friend, and just, free ones on Spotify. And she kind of gave me the rundown of, hey, start with these ones. These a little more, like grounding breath work, and then go a little bit more into the crazy long ones with holds and all this. And I was like, okay, sure. And at that time, I was really focusing on, in my meditation, and this is still primarily what I do, is understanding, what does my ideal future self look like? What do right? If I'm envisioning that and I'm being really focused on who is that person, what does he look like? Is he stronger? Is he fitter? Is he kinder? Does he have more light? Right? So for me, one of the things that I focus on is light. And because when there's a world full of darkness, we need more light. So in that time, it was combining breath work, getting outside of my own head and my body to really kind of calm down my nervous system, to then visualize where I want to go. And so it helped me in that process of becoming more of what I wanted to become.
That's really, really helpful. And I actually think the way you explain that gives us a really good sort of diving board into how other people can help better visualize and access what they want to become.
How did you know that I dove in high school?
That's hysterical.
1 year, I did, yeah.
Story, I took like swimming lessons at age like 3, and then like never did it again. And the running joke through high school was like, why doesn't this kid know how to swim? That's what I bring to the table. So, okay, let's
dive in.
Let's talk here. The very simplest rudimentary level. Explain it to me like I'm 5. What, in your words, would be the simplest way to explain how breath work impacts sport performance?
If I'm explaining it to a 5-year-old, and I recently did explain this to 8-year-old, 9-year-olds for my daughter's soccer team. And so, because over the years I've had different opportunities with my kids' ages to help coach or to help do this and that. And so I always try to find subtle ways to like introduce things to these kids that a lot of coaches don't, right? Because I kind of want to just hey, here's a couple life things, right? Just toss it out at them. So if I'm explaining it to a 5-year-old, I'm going to basically say there are hard things, and we need to be able to calm down our entire body to help us keep going and move forward through those hard things. And breath work allows us to calm down our system and to keep going.
Oh, this is a very good setup to the very next thing I wanted to ask you. We're going to take a really simple example from my world. Fourth quarter, tight basketball game. In your experience, what's happening to the average athlete in that situation psychologically? You talked about, the neuroscience standpoint of it. We'll talk more about neuroplasticity. But describe what's happening in their head and potentially the payoff for practicing these types of skills and what could happen in that moment.
Yeah. So clearly basketball is your sport, right? You talk about the quarters, and we all know that, right? For me, soccer was my main sport growing up. And, so we had halves and, when you were younger, you have quarters and all that stuff. Right. But ultimately your question is, when you are at that pressure moment, right, and you are just feeling it, what does the average person experience? It's heightened anxiety, emotions, all of the brain dump of chemicals, and you've got adrenaline just flooding through, right? And so you are, for lack of a better word, feeling pressure, right? And pressure can just bind us, right? You feel heavy, you can feel stuck. You oftentimes will have a lack of vision and clarity, right? Sometimes if it's really bad, you almost get like just this tunnel closing in effect. And so what happens is, if you don't have the tools to open that tunnel back up, to calm down what is your environment internally and externally, to be able to see the field or the court from a different perspective, then you really are stuck. And so you've got all of these different skills that you've learned, you know what to do, but that fear, the pressure kind of takes over and it binds you up. And so if you've got tools to help you not be stuck, it allows you to see everything that's going on and still tap into those skills and the training that you've received up until this point, to allow you to, the way that I like to put this with everybody that I train and coach is, you have to ask yourself, what is the next best move for me to make, right? A simple question that allows you to keep moving forward. And so it allows you to get to that place of, what is the next best move for me to make? And by practicing these things, it's not something that you really even have to ask at that moment, because you've prepared. You're ready. You know innately what you need to do. And so whether that's to pass, to shoot, whatever, you've prepared yourself for that. And so when that pressure comes, and it's going to come, right? Whether that's life on, just in general outside of your sport, or your sport, and you are in those final moments and you're in the heat of it, you need to be able to keep moving forward in a way that is intentional. And that makes the difference.
The word intentional comes up in my podcast a lot from a lot of different people.
As it probably should.
Yeah. And I think what I got wrong, and what a lot of coaches get wrong, is that concept of intention. For example, when I was a younger coach, I would constantly say to people, you have to figure out a way to stay level in the fourth quarter. And I'm not wrong when I say that, but I'm also not coaching, because I'm not telling them how to do it.
Right.
And what I kind of want to get at is that intentionality, because I think the average person, when we talk about breath work, doesn't understand what's actually happening. So could you explain, in your opinion, what the average person gets wrong about intentional breath work versus what intentional breath work actually is?
Yeah. So I think far too often the instruction is take a deep breath, right? Hey, just breathe, take a deep breath. And while that's not bad as far as an instruction, what does that mean, right? You have to understand the meaning behind it. You have to understand the intention as well. And so it kind of goes both ways, right? If you tell me to just breathe, how do you want me to breathe, right? Your definition of just breathe is probably different than mine, right? If I tell you tree, what kind of tree do you think about? Go ahead. What do you think about?
I mean, when you say that, I think about like a giant oak tree.
Okay. I think about a pine tree.
There you go.
We're thinking about different trees, bro.
Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly it. These are the flaws. These are the flaws
yes,
in coaching.
100%. And so being able to give just a little more context into breathe deep, take a deep breath, calm down, whatever that looks like, makes all the difference with that. So instead of just saying, hey, take a deep breath. Okay, what does that mean? Breathe deep into your diaphragm. Understand that your diaphragm expands outward and is one of the largest, right, muscles around it, your whole core, everything, right? So instead of just breathe, take a deep breath, right? Oftentimes they'll go, and it's like they lift up their shoulders, and it's all just up in the lungs, right? Very top heavy.
It literally looks like panic attack breathing.
Correct. And that's where they don't understand what you mean, right? So give context of what you mean. Okay, and then show them, right? So, hey, take a deep breath. My shoulders didn't change, but my whole diaphragm expanded out, right? And explain what's happening. So when you tell them to take a deep breath, and then the thing that often is forgotten is to have a controlled exhale, right? You tell them, hey, take a deep breath. And so they breathe in, but if it's if it's just like a quick, like, whew, there's reason, like there's a time and a place for that, right? Like one of my favorite things, breathwork wise, is actually similar to that, but it's like deep breaths in and you just let the air fall out, right? One of the kids that I coach, he calls it drop breath because you just kind of drop the air out, right? But if I'm told, hey, just breathe deep, maybe that's what I'm doing. And like you said, it's kind of like a panic attack breathing. And so you have to be able to give a little more context, give a little more understanding, and just tell them, hey, this is what you're doing. You are focusing on calming down, right? Think of something relaxing. Think of the ocean. Think of whatever. And if you can, as if you're coaching them, right, and you're talking about you're in the heat of it, just help them just visualize what that perfect shot, that perfect pass looks like. Just go over it in their head a couple times, visualize that, feel that, and if they're breathing while doing that, then it's going to put them in the right spot to make that best decision.
Now, you've given a couple cues as examples in that. One of the things I think about a lot is the role adrenaline plays in this. So, for example, I have an easier time talking to an athlete in warm-ups earlier in the first quarter. Now, all of a sudden, you're in the flow of the game. It's the second half, and like the amount of misconnections that tend to happen either because I'm elevated or because the head coach is elevated in my most recent situation where I was first assistant, or the athlete is elevated. Like you never truly know what is, what's being absorbed and what's not. So what, like for those, what we call them elevated situations, what would your advice be to the communicator, to the person in charge, to like make sure that first message is, it's never going to be perfect, but as receivable by the other party as possible?
Yeah. When it is, let's call it fairly elevated, right? Those emotions. I am a big fan of using some simple somatic tools. And if you are the authority figure, right? And so by nature of the relationship of what you guys are doing, they're going to listen. Whether they're going to hear you and understand you is different, but they're going to listen. They're going to be right. So if you invite them to do an exercise with you, and you guys are both doing that, it kind of levels the playing field in terms of your humanity, right? You are seeing human to human coming to that level where it allows you to better receive each other and whatever's next. And so there's a couple things that I like to do, but one of the ones that's really easy is alternating taps, right? You do kind of like a self hug, right? And it's one of those things that can be very subtle. And so you could almost look like you're just jamming out to a song or whatever. But the self alternating taps is calming down your system and literally telling it, hey, you're okay. You're safe. We're good.
Right now, we're going to give it a whirl.
Right. And so as you do that, so as the coach, you say, all right, hey, we're going to just take a second. We're going to breathe deep in the diaphragm and we're going to do this. Right. You do it together with a controlled exhale. You do that for 10 seconds even. They're going to just be in a place they can hear you. So then together, you're more calm. You're at that level field, and you both are able to see things more clearly. And your entire system isn't so elevated, right? But this is where sometimes people think it's like you can kind of take it too far, where you calm down too much, right? If you're in the heat of it, you want to play a good game, you still need to have that edge, that competitiveness, right? And so there's that balance of not going too much into it where you're, all right, let's just totally calm down and relax. Like that's not what you want to do. You just want to take that tension off to be able to then have a good plan and play and then execute that strategy.
This is an interesting point that you just made because I think there's an interplay between that level you're talking about and two huge buzzwords in intercollegiate and, for that matter, professional athletics. And those two buzzwords are toughness and resilience. And I kind of want to tackle them one at a time. I want to start with this concept of toughness.
As you're talking physical toughness, right? Like you're hold on, see if we can get a good bicep shot.
Yeah, gun show. But this is actually, it's so funny you say that because as you get older, first it happens as a player, but then especially as you get older as a coach, you're like, there is way more to toughness than the innate physical or emotional presence. Mm-hmm. Toughness is your ability to be unaffected by circumstance.
I would challenge that a little bit.
Let's hear it.
I don't think you can totally be unaffected, but the ability to keep moving forward regardless, right? That's the difference there. The toughness is having all the tools that you need to keep moving forward regardless of how hard things are. At any level, physical, spiritual, mental, it's to keep moving forward.
I like that. So would you say then that breathing is what allows you to then be less affected by the circumstances, or just that in that general approach?
Yeah, I would say that it's a fantastic tool to be used, right? I don't think it's end all be all cure all kind of a thing, right? But the more tools that you can have to take control over that internal reaction to whatever that outside force is, that makes the difference, right? So breath work is one that absolutely helps, and meditation, and it could be exercising, right? It could be prayer. It could be whatever those things are and you should have several tools that you can tap into to then bring that into play, right? But something that allows you to, even if you have a quick pause to reset, just to then keep going forward, right? So super rudimentary example, we talked about trees. And I thought about a pine tree. One of the reasons for that is I grew up in Colorado. I still live in the Mountain West, and I've always loved the mountains, and I've loved pine trees. So one of the things that I do whenever possible, as I pass a pine tree, or a bush that's pine or whatever, right? That evergreen kind of family. I will grab a couple pine needles and I break them and I take an intentional breath.
Smell?
Yeah. I smell it and I breathe it, and it's a total reset within 5 seconds type of a thing, right? And so, but by doing that, I'm combining the breath work, I'm combining mindfulness and intention, as well as grounding, right? So these different things that come together, all these different tools that allow me to just quickly, all right, I'm reset, I'm good, let's go.
So I wonder if what you just said is where resilience is the interplay. And you know, I have always understood, at least as I've aged, resilience is much more of I can endure the thing, and much less of I am, you know, above the thing. The thing doesn't impact me. So it's almost, it's funny the way you describe toughness is kind of the way I was thinking about resilience, and I now wonder if those are a bit more interchangeable than I once thought. But if you could visualize resilience, what is it to you?
I would say resilience, yes, is very similar. But to me, the difference is, you know, there are forces fighting against you. It's almost like you plan for it, right? You know that things are going to be hard. It's not that circumstances have changed and you need to be tough. It's that you are preparing for crap to happen and knowing the things that you're going to need to get through that.
Okay. We're going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here. This is really good. I want to share a story. I want to tell you how I handled it. I think I did well, but I want you to like jump in and interject, because especially hearing you talk about what you're talking about now and layering in mindfulness and talking about breathing, I think it could be better.
Okay.
Something that we experience all the time at the collegiate level, it happens with almost every player that plays the game, is that the skill that helped them get recruited to the college level becomes almost like a crutch as the game speeds up. So I'm going to give you a very specific example. Kid trails the play, catches the ball at the top of the key, loves to drive right. At the high school level, bigger, faster, stronger than everybody. No one's stopping you.
Yeah.
When you drive right. You come in as a freshman or a first year on the women's side, and you're flying high because nobody knows that that's what you do yet, because nobody knows who you are. So first couple games you play, I'm driving right, I'm flying high, things are going great. Now all of a sudden, it's on film. And you start playing team after team that the moment you catch the ball, they position their bodies because they've watched the film. Mm-hmm. Not only can you not go right, like not only is your go-to move not going to work,
but now you have a tree in front of you.
Bingo. They're going to force you to do something that you don't like to do. And when I see the first big obstacle, and I don't know if this would surprise you or not, David, I have met a number of athletes who struggled for years to get past that thing. So how can we help those people in that moment recognize those types of things, and how can we help them be a bit more resilient in those moments? And I'm going to continue the story after I hear your response.
Okay. For me, part of that comes to that golden question. What is the next best move for me to make? And in order to fully execute on whatever that next best move is, again, you've got to prepare yourself for the ability to do that. So from a physical standpoint, your training needs to be dialed such that you don't have one move at all times, right? You've got several. You need to be able to read the environment internally and externally to be able to make your decision and to be able to move forward. And again, the more and more that you practice this, the more natural and seamless it becomes. It's not like a pause to think about, if I go right and I run into them, are they going to foul? Am I going to free throw? Right? Or if I go left, can I get around them? Am I quick enough? Right? Like, you're not actually thinking about all these things. You are, but you're not. Right? I mean, we think about 900 plus words a minute.
Right.
So
Right.
we are humming, right? But it's the practice of what to do. And so as you are combining your training physically with your training mentally to be able to ask those sorts of questions, you put yourself in a position to be able to react in a way that the game needs you to react. Okay. And so what I would do if I'm coach is, do you want me to go there now, or you want me to?
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Okay. Let's hear it.
I mean, for me, part of that is if I start to see those things, one, to me, it just says you need to round yourself out a bit more. And so we're going to work on some physical drills that allow you to take it left, to take it back, to take it forward, right? You are looking at all the different directions that you could possibly go. And so that may be you with the ball. That may be somebody else with the ball. So practicing those different scenarios to enable yourself to have the skill set to pass, to shoot, to move, whatever that is. And from the mental side of it, we are visualizing that, right? We are, again, using some breath work to calm down the system, and then taking a few moments to visualize and run through that in a very real way. The more real and vivid you can make it, the better it's going to be for your brain, and then your body is going to follow.
So I want to share with you now what I did, and I think where I've grown to better incorporate this mindful component.
Dope. I love it. Let's hear it.
So I would always drill the moves. You would start in the film room, show them, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what the defense is doing. But look, here's what else is open. So let's go work on those moves. That started.
Great.
Where I fell short is you talked about reading and scanning. And what I used to think was enough in my 20s as a coach, I now know in my late 30s was not enough. Because in my 20s, I would drill the move, but I wouldn't necessarily teach you how to scan what you were looking for, because I just wanted you to get good at the move. In my most recent coaching job, and I think this is something, it's funny, when you're a younger player, I think the thing that I'm about to talk about drives you insane, but as you start to slow down and be able to gather yourself mentally, you realize how important this is. The film we'd review is not actually you making the wrong move or what the defense is doing. It's what you're doing on the catch. And I would start to teach people how to scan. And we literally called it checking the rim. So if you caught the ball along the perimeter, you had to catch. The old basketball term is triple threat. That matters less to me. The thing that I care about is that you catch and you check your shot. So the very first thing you're doing is catching the ball and putting it in a shooting position and looking at the rim. And the reason why I would give players was twofold. One, as you alluded to, David, we move so fast that half the time you don't even know that you're open to shoot the ball. So you have to look at the rim, because you'll see if there's a defender running at you. And you'll be like, oh, I'm open. Let's rock and roll. But the second thing is, by looking at the rim, it unlocks your periphery. And you can see what your lanes are to your left and right and which side you should be moving to. So where I... Oh, go ahead, please. Yeah.
Other players.
Bingo.
Right? Your teammates.
Bingo. So as I evolved as a coach, and as I, developed and met so many great mentors in my profession, what I started to realize is, let's not even correct the move every single time. Obviously, that alternate move or that counter move is what we want, but let's see what's happening before then that leads to it. And time after time after time, they didn't check the rim to scan. So then the conversation shifts to what we're talking about right now. Okay, I can teach you this move, but until we solve this thing at the foundational level, and get you a bit more like what I used to call it was, I want you to dial back the dial 10%. Like you're so locked in that you're not actually in a flow state. You're just, you're going. I want you to be able to see everything. So that I would say, and it's funny hearing you say what you said, because it seems like we're on the same page. That was my growth from point A to point B as a coach was, you know, hey, it's less about the move. The move matters, but how are you going to know what move to make until you can actually see what's going on right in front of you?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing that I have found is the more that you practice the power of that pause, right? And being able to scan and read and all those things, the more that you practice that and the more comfortable you are, what you realize is a lot of the skills that you need are already there. You just haven't used them in that way. You haven't built those patterns in to be able to structure it in a different way because you've always driven right. You always drive right, right? You've built patterns. And so in a way, you are, by rewiring the brain and how you are reacting in that time, you're also rewiring and rechecking those patterns to reestablish something that allows for that flow to happen. And that's what I found. You're no longer so stuck.
Oh, you just said something that's extremely important. So we're going to, I know I'm organized. You know the coach in me because you saw the email I sent you preparing for this podcast. We're going to deviate from that.
Yeah, but I knew
you said something.
I mean, it goes everywhere. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. This is really, really important to me, what you just said, because the act of learning how to breathe mindfully itself is a gajillion times harder than the average person thinks it is. It is something that takes practice and reps. And I remember how, like, I thought the first time that I sat and did a mindfulness exercise, I thought I was a lunatic. I was like, I can't control my mind. My mind is racing. I can literally only focus on my breath for like 6 to 7 seconds at a time before I'm like, oh, I wonder, how badly the Mets are going to flub the next week of baseball. Or something like that. Right. And you alluded to it earlier with we think about 900 words per minute, but you just got it even more, which is it takes a routine. Could you shed a little light on like those frustration points and how learning how to be mindful itself almost reflects the same sort of practice it takes to become better at a sport?
Yeah. So if you recall, when that friend of mine introduced me to this particular guy on Spotify, his name's Steve Rio, for anybody that wants to check it out. He's got some really good stuff and it's free. But he's got several grounding breathwork exercises. It's guided and it's very kind of, 4 in, 8 out, different things, right? You are really working on just getting to a nice, calm place. But he's got these other ones that are holotropic in nature, we'll call it. And so you are intentionally eliciting a physical response in the body that mimics a high in a way, and no drugs involved. And so if you were to try and jump right into one of those right out the gate, there's no way you're going to be able to complete it. Right? Like you physically you're just gonna be like, I can't do this. Like no way. Right?
You're
you
from
can't
the
hold
mountains.
your breath enough. You can't whatever. It does not matter. If you try and jump into it, you're not going to do that.
You're from the mountains. So is a fair analogy for this, like, you literally just got off the bunny slope. We're not going on the double black diamond. Is that
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or even, it's like you feel like you're great at greens. Yeah, I've got this down, right? And then you're going to go hit the diamonds, or you're going to, hit the backcountry and shred the gnar on the pow, right? It's like not going to happen.
You're not going to pizza your way down the top of the mountain.
So gassed, right? Yep. And so for me, it was this very gradual, just start where you're at, right? For me, I started where I was at and finding what did work. So for me, that visualization side of meditation, by actively seeing myself in the future, that ideal version, the things that I want to become, helped me to kind of start building that habit, right? So sometimes it was like 2-3 minutes just starting, right? Because that's where I could go. And I could hold my attention in that space for that time. And then it was like 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then 15 minutes. And it's the same with breath work. I like to be able to just start simple, right? Doing something simple like the physiological sigh. A lot of people are familiar with that. Andrew Huberman, who's a neuroscientist and fantastic interviewer for podcasting and stuff, he talks about this. And I think he even did it on the Jimmy Fallon show. The physiological sigh is a very simple way to kind of calm down your system. And there is science backing it, which is always a plus, right? And it's a big exhale in through your nose with another quick one up at the top, and then a slow exhale through the mouth. And you repeat it three times is kind of the minimum, right? So when I first work with an athlete, we do that, and I do it with them, and we usually do about 5 of them, right? And it looks kind of like this, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the physiological sigh. Yeah. Okay, cool. But just so that in case people are watching, they don't know, it's in that nice controlled exhale, right? Like
The
you
exhale
keep going.
is it usually for 8, the exhale?
I actually don't put a time on it.
Empty the tank.
Just control, right?
Okay.
A controlled slow exhale. If it's something guided, yes, there's typically a time, and 8 is a very common number. But I kind of, this is like, I don't know, maybe it's like the punk in me that when I'm first working with an athlete and we're doing that, I almost make sure that I always outlast them on that slow exhale, slow controlled, right? They'll finish and I'll just keep going. And they're like,
you can
what?
model the way.
Right. Exactly. And so doing 3 of those, 5 of those, that is like, just start there, right? Start simple, start where you're at. You have to build this in. And then over time, build yourself up to a 10-minute breathwork, 15-minute, 30-minute breathwork session where you are then going to get deeper and deeper. But by that point, you've built up the ability to do that, right? You cannot just go run a marathon. You've got to train for it.
I love this. Let's take what you just shared and let's give you a hypothetical, because obviously teams are made up of drastically different personality types and not everybody on the team is going to need the exact same thing. But let's just give 2 sides of the coin. How would your work potentially differ with someone that needs to be like lassoed back and cooled down versus someone that is too low, maybe like in the yellow and needs to be elevated?
What I love about these different things is similar to what we talked about before. You've got a coach and a player, and you're trying to kind of level that field, right? By working on mindfulness and using breath as a way to tap into kind of a lower state, right? From you're not so heightened, your nervous system. So you lower that state, you bring it to that baseline that is the ability to make a good decision. And so what I like about it is when you work with the whole team on it, the dude that thinks he's all that sometimes might be and oftentimes isn't, right? But he thinks he is. And the kid that doesn't believe in himself enough, both of those get to the point where they can make a good decision of what needs to happen in that moment. And so by doing that together, you kind of are ratcheting that one in and bolstering up the one that needs it, because you're giving them the ability to confidently make the next best move. So what I like about all of this, and one of the things that I talk about in the coaching that I do, is all of these things help you to get to a place where you are more confident in who you are and where you're going, right? And they go hand in hand.
This is really good. And I think sets us up for the last thing I really wanted to talk to you about, which for a spelling bee, I would basically go, can you use it in a sentence? I I would love it if you were open to this. I want to kind of do a practical walkthrough. So I want to close here by giving you two different hypotheticals. And I'll also say this can take as long or as little as you'd like. There is no minimums or maximums on this. But first one would be a very, very popular time to do any sort of neuroplasticity work, any sort of mindful work is pregame, like right before you go out, your final little bit of time in the locker room. Can you walk us through, an effective ritual or habit builder exercise that you really like?
Yeah. If you are talking kind of pregame, kind of get in the zone type of a scenario, I'm a big fan of first calming down the system through breath work. And again, that visualization piece of literally putting yourself in a few different scenarios on the field, on the court, whatever that is, and how you're going to react, right? But not just how you're going to react like, oh, what would I do or what have I done? It's what is the best version of yourself doing, right? You're kind of opening up the possibilities for what you can do and what you can become in that moment. And so that can literally just take a few minutes to just, right. And maybe it's just, you do the physiological sigh, you kind of calm down. One thing that I like to do, I don't know if I have the space here, we may need to get creative, but I can kind of do it in my chair. I normally I do.
You could also walk me through it, and I could try to model it, but I don't.
Right? Yeah. But I like to do it standing, and it's a way to kind of just like clear out, right?
Okay.
From a physical sense and a cognitive sense, and so it's kind of a big breath in, and you kind of like throw it out. And again, you're standing, and so it looks. I'll kind of turn a little bit here as long as I don't pull out my wire, right? It's like, right? But like a full body, like throw it down kind of a thing. And it kind of just, it brings in some somatic work, and it brings in the breath work and that mindfulness. You're being very clear with what you're doing. And it's all with the intention of getting into that right space to make the next best move in when it comes down to it, right? When you're actually playing. And so, so I guess that's kind of two different but slightly similar ones, right? As far as like in that moment, hypothetical, getting ready. Now, in terms of neuroplasticity, our brains are much more open to growth and change if we have a regular routine and schedule, for the most part, about the hour before bed and the hour after you wake up. And so what I like to do is figure out which one you like better, which one works better for you, and that you're able to be consistent in. Take one of those windows of time and be very intentional with that meditation and with that growth of
every day, right?
Yes, every day, right? And so this isn't right before you're going to go out, right? This is building that into your daily work of who you are and who you're becoming.
Now, to just get a little more specific, because I've seen this done so many ways. Is there a way that you like breathing in those moments? Because it's funny, you answered the second question really before I even asked it, which was like, can you give me a daily practice? What is there a certain pattern to the breath you like it to look like? And I'm going to give you an example, because I know we've talked about the James Nestor breath book before, but I was a huge fan of what they talked about with samurai breathing, which is when you're doing some deep, intentional, calming breath work, visualize that you have a feather above your upper lip, and when you exhale, you can't move the feather. So that's how you're sort of establishing that control, as your breath is really calm. Is there any sort of style that you like for those daily visualizations?
And you're talking about kind of the bookends, right? The daily work, not just before the game.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just day to day.
Yes. So I actually really, there's several, I mean, You know this well. Once you practice breath work and you try a lot of different styles, sometimes it kind of morphs, right? And you kind of find sometimes like, what is your style? But one that I really like that I kind of start my athletes on is that drop breath kind of a thing. And it involves, what I do is we do 3 rounds and about 30 breaths in each round. And between each, at the kind of end of each round, you're doing an exhale and a hold, right? So you are pushing the air out, not all the way fully just yet, but what's comfortable. Sometimes you'll try and push it out too much. And so then you're like struggling, like, right? Like
strain, right?
Let it out comfortably, empty lungs, and then you kind of chill there. And you do that 3 times, and that's going to really get you to a place where you're just really slightly buzzing, kind of just, okay, yeah, I'm in a good spot. And then close your eyes and really work on that. And from there, in and out through the nose, but just slow, kind of like that feather, right? That feather breathing, just really controlled, slow. And so that's what I like to do for that daily, right? And so again, as a reminder, it kind of is like, and then you hold that, right, for like 20, 30 seconds, as long as you can. And then when you can't any longer, push it all the way out, and then start over.
Breath in.
Yeah. And 3 times, right? So you're doing kind of 3 rounds of 30 is what I typically do with the athletes that I work with, because it really puts you into a good spot where you just feel clear, right? And so that allows you to then move into that space.
Love that. And it's also, I mean, one of the coolest things about diving a little bit more into this space and learning more about the vastness is there's different breath exercises for different purposes. There's kind of get in the zone, there's get calm, there's, get elevated. I've seen, and this is, I don't want to dive into the entire like Wim Hof category of it, but like there's also real cardio work,
for sure,
work that can come with breathing like this. That's stuff I'm not allowed to do yet, according to my doctors, but
not for you. For you,
you
really need to get clear exhales, full exhales, get those lungs into a better spot.
Yeah. But this is, wow. It's funny. You have some conversations sometimes that are like, this has nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with basketball. And something that I'm famous for, and I don't even know if you picked this up. When I started doing this business, David, I made it mandatory that my background reflected what my actual office looked like, which was for the entirety of my basketball coaching career, I had no basketball memorabilia in my office. I always wanted to know that, like, I wanted people to know, like, I pick up my influences from elsewhere. I'm a human. I love this game.
Yeah.
It's the biggest part of my identity, but it's not the only part. And I have all these books that have helped me shape my leadership philosophy that have nothing to do with basketball. And the thing that I value the most about what you just shared, David, is the amount that you could improve as an athlete, taking heed to everything you just shared for the last near hour. It's nothing to do with basketball, but it's also like the cheat code to basketball on like an inner game of tennis level, if you're familiar with that book. So I cannot thank you enough for making this time. I'm obviously this stuff is gonna be linked in the podcast description, but if people wanted to find you specifically, to learn more about breath work or to talk to you, where can they find you?
The 2 simplest are going to be Instagram and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just David Hitz. That's Hitz. And on Instagram, the Neuro Pro. Those are going to be the most simple.
Perfect. I'll make sure that people have links to follow you. And I seriously can't thank you enough for your time. This was such a cool conversation. And also something about doing breathing and talking about breathing make ground for reflection a lot easier. So it was really cool to reflect on some of the stuff with you. Thanks again for making the time, David. I appreciate you.
No, thank you.
That's going to do it for another episode of the Nail the Recruiting Process podcast. For more information about my Nail the Recruiting Process project or the work that I do with individuals or teams, please visit www.nailtherecruitingprocess.com. If you have ideas for podcast guests, questions that you'd like to have answered on the show, or you just want to reach out and say hi, please feel free to email me anytime at recruitinggear@gmail.com. That's the word recruiting, the word gear, all one word, at gmail.com. Finally, follow me on social media at Nail the Recruiting Process on Instagram. That's my home base for all news, updates, and content. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening.